Now that we looked at authentication, the first A of the IAAA model, let's look at authorization. Our subjects have proven who they are. Now what do we give them access to? And which access control models do we use? And that really is dependent on what's important in our organization. If confidentiality is the most important thing to us, then we'll probably go with mandatory access control, or MAC. If, however, availability is most important, we would probably go with discretionary access control. And if integrity is most important to us, we might go with RBAC, role-based access control, or ABAC, attribute-based access control. And these should not be confused with RUBAC, role-based access control. That's what our old firewalls, for instance, use. If this, then that. And since we don't want to use something so simple, we have it in conjunction with some of the other models to provide our defense in depth. So let's look some more of these models. Discretionary access control is used when availability is the most important thing from the CIA triad. And as the name indicates, access is assigned based on the data owner's discretion. It's at their discretion who they give access. And the data owner can add and remove rights or access completely. This is most commonly used in operating systems. You can share your drive or you can share a folder with someone. And it uses DACLs or discretionary access lists based on a user's identity. Mandatory access control, remember, that's when confidentiality is the most important thing. And access to objects are determined by labels and clearance. Subjects have clearance, objects have labels. And this is mostly used in military organizations that are defense contractors. And I have seen in a few places in the private sector that were outside of defense contractors, in places where if they were compromised, it would have grave consequences. So the objects have labels. The subject's clearance must dominate the object's label, meaning it must be higher or equal to. And we use the labels to allow our subjects with the right clearance to access them. But they are often much more granular than just top secret. They can be top secret nuclear, submarine, or something like that. Sometimes, even if you have top secret, you might not be able to access secret because either we don't want the lower level information to contaminate your knowledge, or we don't want you to be able to write down with higher level knowledge to a lower level folder. And then clearance. Subject have clearance, and it's based on the subject current and future trustworthiness. And the higher clearance you need, the more in-depth the background checks would be. They can easily go back 5, 10, 15, 20 years, your entire life maybe, to see if there's any flags or indicators that you may not be trustworthy. Have you committed any crimes? Do you owe money? Do you have a gambling problem, drinking problem, drug problem? Have you been terminated because of wrongdoings? All of this could be something they would consider before they grant you clearance. Role-based access control, or RBAC. This is what we use when integrity is the most important thing. And this is what the vast majority of the private sector uses. It's a policy-neutral access control that's defined around roles and privileges. And access is assigned to a job role. If you're a security analyst, you get security analyst job role rights assigned to you. If you're a network administrator, you get network administrator rights. And these almost always comes with a need to know. Remember how the 15 employees at Kaiser got either fired or reprimanded because they accessed Natalie Schulman's records without having a need to. In a hospital setting, most nurses and doctors will probably have access to all patient records. That does not mean they are allowed to access them. They need to have and need to know. They need to be treating that patient, otherwise they're not allowed to access the records. And if you look at the graphics over here on the right, we use RBAC to make the administrations of thousands and thousands of users and 10,000s of different types of permissions much easier. So each job role is mapped out to certain permissions. This is by far the most common type of access control, but there is a shift towards ABAC, which we'll cover next. And on top of enforcing the need to know, we also need to ensure that we don't have privilege creep. Privilege creep is when an employee moves to a different role. We assign them the rights for the new role, but we do not remove the old ones. If Jane works in IT security and she moves to the networking team, we need to remove IT security and add networking. If we don't, then she'll have rights for both. Then in 2 years, when she moves to the server team, we add on server. Then she moves to HR, we add HR. If we do not remove all the old roles, she can at some point have a tremendous set of rights and be able to do things we would want no employee to do. So when people move, we add the new rights, we remove the old ones. ABAC, or attribute-based access control, Access is based on subjects, objects, and environmental conditions. If we return to the example of the nurse, a nurse who does not have the need to know would get rejected. They would try to access the patient records, the authorization engine would look at our policies, and then the environmental conditions. Who, what, when, where, why, how. If our policies are set up to allow nurses only to access records for patients they're actively treating, she or he would get denied. We might not want to be that aggressive, because there are areas where you're not assigned the patients before you treat them. In this case, we might want to add a confirmation screen. We don't see this as an active patient on yours. Are you sure this is the patient record you want to access? There might be consequences if you access patient records that you shouldn't. So you can see it's much more granular and much more secure than role-based access control. But obviously it needs to be built outright and give us the flexibility we need in our organization. It's used today by about 10% of large enterprises, but it is expected to be used by up to 70% of large enterprises within the next 5 years. And you may see it somewhere else referred to as policy-based access control, PBAC, or claims-based access control, CBAC. On the certification, it's always going to be attribute-based access control. Some of what we do in context-based access control can be rolled into ABAC. Here, access is controlled on certain contextual parameters. We can give subjects access based on their time, location, the sequence of responses, or their access history. Meaning, if I try to access a file from my home network and my company knows my IP address, I'll get access. But they might lock access down after hours. So if I try to do it at 2 in the morning, I may not get access. Or if someone from an IP in China tries to log in with my credentials, they won't get access. Or it could just be a challenge response mechanism like CAPTCHA. Or what's your stuffed toy animal's name? It's based on the context of me trying to access data. If one of the context parameters are not met, I won't get access. And context really just means the circumstances. If the circumstances aren't right, then I won't get access. Not to be confused with content-based access control. Content is what I'm trying to access. If a physical therapist logs into a patient record, she might get one set of menus shown, the ones that are important to her job. Where if a pharmacist or a doctor logged into the same patient records, they would get different results shown. So we can hide or show menus in applications, views in databases, or access to confidential information based on the subject and the content they're trying to access.